Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome into Best on the Board presented by BetMGM. We are just days away from Conference Championship Sunday in the NFL. Chiefs and Bengals, Rams and 49ers. We're going to talk through those two games from every betting angle we can conceive of here on Best on the Board. Michael Beller here with you to lead you through this discussion. I am joined as always by Andrew DeWitt. DeWitt, talked a couple of days ago. Have you been formulating more or stronger opinions since then?
I have two. I've settled on which sides I'm going to go on for this game, and then I went digging on a couple props. So let's see if we get lucky this week and have some fun with it.
Hey, speaking of the props, Zac Jackson gave us a few winners in that realm last week. Zach, back for some more this week. What's up, man?
It's hard to win, so you got to celebrate like hell when you do, right?
Yeah. Oh my God, absolutely. I've been in this gambling and fantasy world for a long time, and people want to talk some trash to people when they're victory lapping. Like, no, what are we in this for? We're in this to win. It's hard to do. It's fun to do. Celebrate your victories. Absolutely. Hit that homer, flip that bat, pat yourself on the back. Let's have some fun. Just don't be a sore loser about it when you do lose.
No, it is. You get an ego quickly, right? And you crush yourself. So, listen, I've done okay. I'm not chasing in the conference championship games. I've been in that spot before, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I don't have super strong feelings, but I did dig deep. So let's see if we can stay hot on a couple.
Yeah, well, let's try to do that. As I said, we're going to talk through this from every angle we can conceive of. This is all we're doing on this show. No college basketball, no NBA. We are just talking these two conference championship games. So let's start, you guys, with the first game of the day on Sunday. That would be the AFC Championship. Where it sits right now on BetMGM is Chiefs minus 7.5 and 54.5 is the total. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, you see that the Chiefs at minus 7.5 is plus 100. It's minus 120 if you're going to take the Bengals at plus 7.5. Most other shops have this at 7. This BetMGM shop is shading us toward that, so wouldn't be surprised if we ultimately see this one land at 7 by kickoff and maybe, just maybe, stick there the rest of the way. So let's take a look at this one, you guys. Obviously, we know these two teams played, maybe a month ago, a little bit more than that, and the Bengals come up with a big victory in that game, winning 34-31. It's what clinched them the division. It's what knocked the Chiefs out of the 1 seed and down to the 2 seed. It's a big part of the reason why these two teams are playing this week and did not play last week. So, we're looking at a game that maybe could be instructive for our purposes as we are sizing up the AFC Championship game. Zach, I'm going to start with you on this. Do you draw anything from that first matchup that you can apply to this one?
Yeah, Jamar Chase went nuts. So that's going to be the Chiefs' number one defensive goal is to keep that from happening. The Bengals, they really grew up that day, right? They were down multiple scores twice. They came back. Then they had that game management at the end where everybody on Twitter, kind of had an opinion, and then the 2 penalty flags came and all of that stuff. Look, the Bengals are good. The Chiefs are better, right? Mm-hmm. I start by saying I think the Chiefs are going to win this game. So it's minus 350 on the money line. I'm not alone in that opinion. Do you want to tease? Do you want to start parlaying with Horizon League basketball tonight or something like that?
Do you want to start doing that?
Yes. I think that's one strategy, right? I do think the Chiefs win the game. Because Jamar Chase went nuts in the first game, and we've seen that he's capable. He looks like a young Randy Moss, right? I'm going to start on the Bengals side by looking at T. Higgins, 5.5 receptions, 70-ish, 71 yards, depending on where you get it. T. Higgins was big last week. I think he'll be big again. I think that's just how things are going to dictate. If you think the Chiefs are going to win, and I do, they did a really nice job last week bringing Edwards-Helaire out of the bullpen. He really ran hard. He was fresh at the end. His rushing total is only 37.5 yards. If you think the Chiefs are going to have the ball in the lead again in the second half, I think they're going to let him loose there. So I start my props with Higgins and Edwards-Helaire, but my overall thinking, guys, is the Chiefs win the game. So, how can I maximize that on parlays, teasers, whatever else you do? I think it's still plus 130 for the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely the right place to start, I think, and that's where I start as well. Something I've got written down on my sheet is right in line with what you're talking about, Zach, with T. Higgins. Anytime touchdown sitting at plus 140. And I think that's something that's going to be fun to look at. Jamar Chase is obviously going to get the attention not only of the Chiefs, but of bettors as well. T. Higgins might be a good pivot there. You mentioned, Zach, that the Bengals came back down from a couple of scores twice in this game. It was 28-17 at halftime. The Chiefs had the lead, and there was a big kickoff return for a touchdown after the Bengals had cut it. that really could have changed the momentum of that game that got back because of a holding penalty, blah, blah, blah. We go from there. So it's 28-17 at halftime. The Bengals end up winning that game 34-31. Just 3 points scored for the Chiefs in the second half. So maybe that's something that the Bengals can draw on their second half performance on defense, holding the Chiefs to 3 points in that final 30 minutes of football to maybe keep them at least somewhat in check, something in check this weekend when they're playing for a trip to the Super Bowl. DeWitt, on to you here. What do you draw, if anything, from that first matchup between these two?
There were a lot of penalties. A lot of penalties. Of all the drives, I went back and watched it and looked at it. The Bengals, all of their touchdown drives were extended by a penalty on third or fourth down. So there were a lot of penalties in that game. They got a lot of help from the refs. Austin Mock, who does our NFL model at The Athletic, his advanced box score still had the Chiefs winning the game, even though they lost based on those penalties and extending the drives out. And in this game, Bill Vinovich is the referee, which if you are familiar in betting circles, he is the referee who calls no penalties whatsoever. That being said, there will be an all-star crew on Sunday, so he will not have his usual referees around him. Bill Vinovich does not call any penalties. Carl Sheffers, the opposite. He's in the Rams 49ers games. He calls all the penalties, and he calls all the holding penalties. So that'll be interesting to watch in that game. But so that's one thing, is that NFL clearly did not want to put a crew that called a lot of penalties on the Chiefs into this game. So that's kind of something I'm looking at. And then props wise, I think one I'm kind of circling just to sprinkle a little bit is Joe Burrow is 50-1 on the first touchdown. So that is like one where it's like, and he's plus 450 to even score a touchdown. And we've seen, and I think we touched on this on Monday, but the quarterbacks will run a lot more in the playoffs. They're willing to get outside the pocket. And the way that Bengals offensive line, I know that the Chiefs are going to come after them on Sundays. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. But I wouldn't be surprised if, and going back to the player props and the totals, like if they're going to be blitzing all the time, they're going to get burned at some point by Chase or Higgins. Tyler Boyd maybe gets a big catch and like racks up a bunch of yards. So that'll be interesting. And I mean, I still think this game is going to be wide open. And I think I'm going to make a bet on the Chiefs at -7, because I think this is a game where, coming off that huge win last week, emotional, that team is like fully ready to go. They're focused this week, and they're just going to come out and take care of business, especially at home.
Joe Burrow went 30 for 39, 446 yards and 4 touchdowns in that first game, was sacked 4 times. And, obviously the Titans got after him 9 times, and, a 4-time almost feels like a floor. It almost feels like if you told the Bengals you're going to give up 4 sacks, they would just sign up for that and take it right now. But it's not as though he was living totally comfortably. The Chiefs were able to get after him in that game, and he still, as I said, 30 for 39, 446 yards, 4 touchdowns in that win for the Bengals over the Chiefs. Zach, you think we see anything different from the Chiefs defensively? Maybe something they can draw from what the Titans did a week ago?
Yeah, I think I think they are going to put more attention on Jamar Chase, right?
Sort of have to, yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree with your thought that if you only get sacked 4 times, they're fine. Right? Like, this is a team that knows that its weak link is the offensive line. Burrow's a playmaker. I think by social norms and Twitter norms, we have to call him sneaky athletic. To go to Andrew's point, he's not. He's athletic. Like, this guy was an all-state basketball player.
First in, last out. He's a gym rat. He's a coach's son. All of it.
Yes. No, he can move. It's not something they want to do. But the same with Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes rushing over hit last week on the first drive of the game, right?
Yeah.
They do run more in the playoffs, and I think you blitz less. Something too that points me towards a winner here as far as the Chiefs pass rush and all that. I like the Chiefs to score first, and the price is a lot less than -350. I think they have the big stage experience. I think they have Chris Jones and the better defensive line, right? Buffalo had to go for it last week on the first drive of the game to keep it going. I'm not saying the Bengals won't go for that. I think it's much more in Buffalo's DNA than it is in Zach Taylor's DNA to do that. I think the Chiefs to score first is a good bet here. I'm assuming somewhere, I didn't get this far, there is a sack prop probably for a conference championship game. I would take a look at that if you think the Chiefs are going to win, which we obviously all do. But I'm with Andrew sprinkling on that, and I think the Chiefs to score is something that's at the top of to score first. Excuse me, is something that's at the top of my list.
We're talking Bengals. We've at least hit a few Bengals player props. Are there any Chiefs player props that either of you guys are already circling? And either you can jump in here, because I look at. I'm going to jump in. Either you can jump in. I'm going to jump in. The one that is intriguing to me is. And not the one, but the first one that jumped out at me is a Travis Kelce anytime TD at -125. hate paying minus 125 for a touchdown, but I feel like he's like Jerick McKinnon's at minus 105. Tyreek's also at minus 125. Clyde Edwards-Helaire plus 115. I think that's an interesting one as well. It's really Kelsey and Helaire who are the first two guys who I look to in terms of the price being right for the likelihood that it happens. Those are the guys who I'm looking at here before we start getting into the T. Higginses of the world. I have a few stronger plays on that regard when we flip over to the NFC. Any Chiefs player props either you guys like?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned Edwards-Helaire over. I would keep riding the Pringle train. I don't think minus 125 is a ridiculous price by any means on Kelsey, but I would keep riding the Pringle train because I got a few pennies to play with on that one.
Let's see. Byron Pringle, anytime touchdown is plus 210. Plus 210 on Byron Pringle.
I mean, you're looking at a game that's going to have minimum 5 touchdowns, right? And maybe 7 or 8.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to assume that. I mean, the total itself is assuming, right, like what? 8 touchdowns, 54 and a half, 7-8 touchdowns in the total there. So definitely something where we could see a lot of guys get to the end zone. DeWitt, before we started recording, you were making some interesting Byron Pringle points. Why don't you give those to the listeners?
Yeah, it was just Zach gave it out last week as a prop, and I went back and looked. Last 4 games, Pringle's had at least 6 or 7 targets. He's just kind of become the secondary wide receiver that they trust to run the routes, the correct routes for Patrick Mahomes, especially in the beginning of the season when they had all the turnovers. That was kind of part of the problem, was drops and wrong routes being run that caused interceptions. And so I think they've kind of turned it into like, Pringle is this guy. You're going to run these secondary routes. It's Hill, it's Travis Kelce, and then they're going to look to Pringle. And Pringle's kind of like the release valve. You're like, oh, Kelce gets covered all the time because he's basically a wide receiver at this point. So I think Pringle over 37.5 is like a good bet. Just It's shaded like it's minus 115, but I think that he's going to get those, especially if it's a back and forth game. The one thing that would concern me about that bet is if the Chiefs get up, and then the only time they're going to throw is going to be like on second down. They typically throw on second down if they're up like in the 3rd and 4th quarters, and then they're kind of going to look till Hill and they're going to look to Kelsey to get those first downs. So.
Yeah, I need to go back to the first game and dig a little deeper on this, but Eli Apple is the Bengals corner you go after, right? So, I just think when you have Pat Mahomes and you have the streak where Pringle has gone from very part-time guy to very full-time guy in a game where their team total is in the 30s, right? Then you have to look at it. You can get those. It's not bad value on any of those.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's put a bow on this game with just number one, absolute top of the list, favorite bet for the AFC Championship game. What do you got, Zach?
Mine would be T. Higgins over 5.5 catches. But what I'm doing is I'm opening parlays with Chiefs money line to all sorts of obscure college basketball games and what I can get my paws on. And if I got enough of them alive, then I'm coming back on Bengals 7.5.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. We've got CJ Moore and Brian Bennett, 2 of our great college hoops reporters, queued up to be on the show tomorrow. We're going to take a look ahead to the weekend slate. Obviously, big slate for us ahead in the college basketball world, but that's awesome. Start opening them up right here tonight. What do you got? What are we looking at? I'm pulling up the schedule
under
right now.
in the Youngstown State Green Bay game.
Yes. This is what Best on the Board's all about. This is really it. Pair the under in Youngstown State Green Bay, UW Green Bay, along with Chiefs to knock off the Bengals with their money line and move on to the Super Bowl. What do we got?
It's minus 20 degrees here in Youngstown State. It's called the Penguins. So does anybody think that it's really going to be hot in that gym? No, it's going to be like 55 to 51.
DeWitt, what do you got? Your favorite play for Chiefs and Bengals?
I'll take the Chiefs. I'm just going to go ahead and take the 7. It's 7.5 at BetMGM, but I'm assuming it's going to drop, and I'll take Chiefs minus 7.
Yeah, I mean, I've liked the Bengals all week, and when it comes down to it, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to pull the trigger. But there are so many props in this game that I like, and so I'm going to get on board with you, Zach, and I'm going to say T. Higgins anytime touchdown. Like we said, there's going to be points, and even if you don't like the total, if you don't love the over, even if you don't think we're going to see 55, you don't think we're going to see 65 the way these two teams got together the first time, we're going to see 47, 51, something like that in this game. There's going to be points put on the board. There are going to be touchdowns scored. T. Higgins at plus 140 for an anytime touchdown. A guy like that, what we've seen from him over the last 2 years, that's going to be something where I'm going to be placing quite a bit of a wager in this very fun game between the Bengals and the Chiefs for the AFC title. All right, guys, let's move on here really quick before we get to the NFC. I want to give you a message from BetMGM, our partner, is the presenting sponsor of Best on the Board. Right now, bet 10, win 150, plus a free 3-month subscription to The Athletic. All you got to do, go to betmgm.com and use the code TheAthleticPod. Act now to take advantage of this offer from the king of sportsbooks. Again, it is bet 10 to win 150, plus 3 free months to The Athletic. BetMGM.com with the code TheAthleticPod. This is a new customer offer for people over at BetMGM. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, guys, NFC Championship game, Rams 49ers 3. The 49ers winning both games between these teams in the regular season. We're looking at Rams minus 3.5. That is, wait, is that where it opened, or did it open at 4? I can't remember.
It opened at 3 briefly, very briefly.
It opened at 3, yeah. So, but it's been sitting at 3.5 for.
It hasn't moved all week.
Yeah, 99% of the time that this line has been available, it's been 3.5. The Rams favored here, obviously. 49ers plus 145 on the money line. 45.5 is the total on this game. And as I just said, 49ers won both of these games between these teams. We all remember the one just a couple of weeks ago in Week 18, 27-24, a game that the Rams led 17-0 at halftime, a game that the Rams led 24-17 with 2.5 minutes left, and the Niners come back, erase both deficits, win it in overtime. Go back to Week 10, the Niners just blew the Rams out, a 31-10 win. Matthew Stafford played poorly in both of these games, 481 total passing yards, 6.5 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. The 49ers have really been able to give Matthew Stafford trouble, and we know if you give Matthew Stafford trouble, you obviously give this entire Rams offense trouble. Zach, what are you looking at when you size these two teams up against one another for the 3rd time this season?
That hook just stares at you, doesn't it? It just you feel it in your spine. I think if you like the Niners, you like the under. I looked at Odell Beckham, who has a hot hand. I mean, Cooper Kupp's in a league of his own, right? And he showed that last week. I look at the drop touchdown by George Kittle last week, or maybe not a touchdown, but that's going to be a 55-yarder. So I lean under. But as far as anytime touchdown, Odell plus 170, Kittle plus 190, 195. You only need to win one of those. Kittle. Yeah. So that's where I start. I feel much stronger about the first game, honestly. The whole thing with the 3rd time matching up and how the Rams jumped on him early in the first game and all the debate about Jimmy G, it just gives me pause. I think the Rams win the game, but man, I don't know if I'm laying 3.5. I really am not sure I can get there.
DeWitt, how about you?
So one thing I just like, you talked about the line movement earlier. The money, so the spread has not moved from 3.5, but the money line has significantly dropped on the 49ers. So like you could have bet like 170 early in the week and it was like plus bet 100, get 170. Now it's at 145, but the line has not dropped. The over under has moved from 47 to 46 to 45. Like Zach said, if you think the 49ers are going to win this game, you think that this is going to be an under game. It's just giving me pause, like some of the line movement on this game. Like my immediate thought was like, oh, the Rams are going to just come out and hammer them. But they got injury issues. Andrew Whitworth practice limited yesterday, but his backup, who performed pretty well in that game, he missed practice yesterday. And then you got on the 49ers, Alex Mack, their all-pro center, who I don't know if is all-pro quality still. He missed practice yesterday. Like there's a whole bunch of like injury concerns on both sides of the ball that I'm Joey Bosa. Man, like there's so many injuries right now that I just don't want to. I mean, it's Wednesday practice, so you probably shouldn't look into it too much. But you know that there's injuries on both sides of the ball here. I kind of like Garoppolo over 233 just because I think they're going to get forced to pass the ball, and like everybody's just going to hammer that, like seeing what happened the last couple of weeks and all that stuff. But I think they're going to get forced to throw the ball, and he, in that Week 18 game, he did lead them down that field on that drive to ice away the game. Go ahead.
He was very efficient in both games that these two teams played in the regular season. Almost 500 yards, 9.8 yards per attempt, 75% completion rate. So he was efficient the 2 times he's seen this Rams defense. That doesn't guarantee anything for the 3rd time that he sees this Rams defense, but he has been basically the best Jimmy G you could hope for. He's brought that in both games against the Rams this year.
Yeah, I think, and this is not to dive too deeply into the film or the scheme, but I think the way they move the pocket and use the misdirection in the Shanahan offense, I think that they have to do that against Aaron Donald, obviously, right? I mean, how many times are quarterbacks sitting ducks? And listen, the debate is on about Jimmy G. What can he do? He's been here. He's not going to freak out and play terribly.
Right.
Right.
He might play terribly, but not because he freaks out.
Right. So, like I said, I think Niners plus 3.5 and under is a great parlay. I think a great teaser is Niners and under. And I totally understand, and Andrew noticed this, that the money line has dropped. I mean, the Niners have owned the Rams. So is this a different game? Are the circumstances different? Can Stafford get hot and put the game out of reach? I think so. But just 4 weeks ago, it seemed like that was the case 3 weeks ago, and the Niners came right back.
Man, I love the Rams, you guys. I love the Rams in this game. I just think it's going to be hard for them. And both of those things have happened. And even though the games were much closer, it's been similar enough where you had inefficient, rattled games out of Stafford. You had very efficient, A+, A- sort of games from Jimmy G. You had the 49ers not being super efficient on the ground in either game, but both games sticking to it, getting 30+ carries out of Eli Mitchell plus Deebo Samuel and staying committed to it. Deebo Samuel made big plays in both those games on the ground. He had a touchdown receiving in one of them as well. He had touchdowns in both of them as a runner. I want to say that game against the Rams was the first one, if not definitely one of the first ones, where we really saw Deebo as running back. And obviously that has been used to great effect for the 49ers. So Deebo rushing attempts not yet posted. It is definitely something that I will be looking at once it is, because that is something that is a key part of their offense generally. And certainly if they're going to stick with the Rams, it's going to have to be Deebo's anytime touchdown -105. Again, don't love minus numbers for anytime touchdowns, but with the role that he has to play, 8 targets and 8 carries should be in line for Deebo Samuel in this game. But I just think when you look at what the Rams are able to do against most opponents, and then you look at what they did against the 49ers, I just think that this is a very tough script for the Niners to come up with once again against a team as good as the Rams. So Rams -3.5 is definitely one that I am going to be placing this weekend. Are we looking at anything else, DeWitt, in the prop world?
Cam Akers under 59.5 yards. It was interesting how much workload they gave him last week. He took 90% of the snaps, fumbled twice, almost cost them the game twice. The first one was, I guess forgivable because he kind of got hit going to the ground trying to score a touchdown, but that second fumble was not forgivable at all. So, I think it's interesting that, Sony Michel carried this team down the stretch, and now they've just given Cam Akers 100% workload, and I don't understand it, frankly. But Sony Michel was the grinding back who was fresh to finish out the regular season for you. So I'm kind of thinking, I'm wondering if they bring back Sony Michel and give him some more of that work, especially if they get a lead, because it's clear that McVay is going to try and run out the clock again. So, which I don't know why he's doing this, but they're a much better team when they're passing instead of running.
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's been a hallmark of Sean McVay ever since he's been the Rams coach, right? He's Mr. Aggressive, but then when they get a lead, he becomes 1990s style head coach conservative once they have a lead.
It doesn't make sense. You're not going to win the Super Bowl playing like that. Frankly, it might work to get you to the Super Bowl, but you're going to run into a quarterback or a team that's just going to say you can play that way, but we're not. We're going to come back on you. And Tom Brady almost did it last week. Frankly, they should have if the defense wasn't so bad in that last possession.
Yeah, he did do it. He got him all the way back.
Right. So I just think I think Cam Akers is. Man, I really want to say that Sony Michel's going to get more of a workload. So
yeah, Cam Akers is obviously their guy, right? Who did he got drafted? He was the second back off the board.
Yeah, he was a second round pick, I believe.
Yeah, and the second back taken in that draft, correct? He was ahead of some big name backs too. So he's clearly their guy. He's clearly McVay's guy. So we'll see just exactly how they use the backfield. But even after those fumbles, I would expect a big workload for Cam Akers again this week. Is there any reason? Can either of you give me a reason not to bet Cooper Kupp over 102.5 yards? Because no matter what the Rams do, Cooper Kupp gets over that number. He did it in both games against the Niners in the regular season.
Yeah, I like that. And although I'm stronger on the first one, I like the Rams to score first in this game too. I just look at the makeup of both teams, taking the home field advantage, take how the last game played out, and I like the Rams to score first.
Yeah, you're liking all these things on the Rams, Zach, and you're still liking the Niners.
I'm a little torn, but Listen,
like Natalie and Bruley.
Well, I would say this: there's precedent for the Rams scoring first or having a lead, and
yes.
the Niners are celebrating at the end.
That is true. That is absolutely true. DeWitt, what is your number one A+ bet in this game? Come on.
I think I'll take the Rams. I think they're just gonna come out and take care of business. I think it's overvalued. Like everyone's like, oh, it's so hard to beat a team 3 times. Like I'm not going on that at all. I think that's kind of like it's cliche. It's all these things, but I honestly just believe that the Rams are gonna come in and take care of business. And hopefully McVay doesn't blow it down the stretch again. But he's been known to do that. So
that's my favorite
nervous.
play.
I'm gonna be nervous all the way to the final whistle on this one.
That's my favorite play in this game too. Love the Kittle prop that you pointed out, Zach. I mean, plus 190. I mean, I know that they've been asking a lot more of Kittle as a blocker, especially with the way that they have to play offense right now. But we're rarely going to get a guy like George Kittle at plus 190 to score a touchdown. I love that. And then Tyler Higbee actually on the other side of this game. Right, he scored 3 touchdowns against the 49ers in those 2 regular season games. He's at plus 240. He's going to have a big role to play in the passing game for the Rams. That's been true ever since the Robert Woods injury, even with Odell getting up to speed for this Rams team. So I look at both tight ends and their touchdown props as guys who could be pretty interesting. But my number one favorite play of this, Rams are the better team. I think the Rams end up winning this game. And I might even take a look at some alt spread, see if we can push this up to 6.5 and then trust the Rams to win this by a touchdown. What do you got, Zach?
Yeah, I'm with that too. I've pretty much said what I'm much more interested in the first game from what I like. But if I'm playing 2 things on this game, it would be Odell and Kittle to score a touchdown at those numbers, knowing I only need 1 to win, but thinking both could hit.
Definitely feel like they both could hit. And Odell had definitely some flashes of the old Odell in that win last week for the Rams over the Buccaneers. So like that, and really just like what we've got ahead of us this weekend. Should be 2 fun games. I think a lot of us thought we might see the Rams and the Chiefs playing this weekend. Maybe not quite as many thought we'd see the Bengals and the 49ers, but still should be 2 very fun games ahead of us in this conference championship weekend. That's going to do it for this episode of Best on the Board. For Zach and DeWitt, I am Michael Beller. Thanks so much for listening. We say good luck, happy betting, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.